right, folks. I am Trea today because Trea's not here, so I get the all right. Welcome to the Senpai Kohai podcast. Unfortunately, Trea could not be here this week, but we do have one of our personal friends, Mr. Daryl, who is somebody that we are really close with and is relatively new to anime fandom. Am I wrong, Daryl?
I would say new to being deeply initiated in it, right? Like I've always been familiar with it. I've always kept it sort of at a good distance. But yeah, recently in the past couple of years, I've sort of steered into the skid and just been like, you know what? Nah, we're going to go ahead and be a full-time anime fan.
Nothing wrong with that. I've been one for freaking 20 years. So at this point, you just get used to it. So with that in mind, we usually do questions, but we're not going to do that this time. We're going to actually start you from your origin story. We're going to ask Daryl here how he got started into anime, because as I know you, you're a huge sports and psychology and wrestling fan. And so a lot of times you don't expect anime fan to be one of those things included in your list. So where did you get started?
Yeah, so for me, it was it kind of started the same way everyone else's did, right? So growing up, Dragon Ball Z was on Cartoon Network. Toonami was sort of the big thing to watch growing up. So watched a lot of Toonami. Dragon Ball Z was sort of it. And honestly, I was thinking about this earlier because I knew a question like this was coming. I was thinking about how I remember initially being introduced to Dragon Ball Z, liking some of it. In fact, I even remember watching Dragon Ball back in the day because they aired that back on Cartoon Network as well. But something about myself is that I remember liking Dragon Ball Z, but being intimidated by it. I remember actually being like frightened at the power. Like it did such a good job of like portraying, helplessness. Because there's so many episodes where all they're doing is they're just shy. They're just polishing up Frieza as this big powerful. They're polishing up Cell as this big powerful thing. The androids are killing people. So as a kid, like that really got to me. So I never really was super into Dragon Ball Z until much later in life. What really got me into anime, honestly, Dragon Ball Z was sort of like the doorstep, but the actual door itself was Naruto. And that was just because I grew up watching that. I remember like watching the very first episode of Naruto on Cartoon Network on Toonami. And from there, it was just pretty much history. I started watching that, and Naruto was the big thing. And then, I kind of watched a couple of things on and off over the years. I had my cousin recommended Full Metal Alchemist to me, which I never actually got around to watching, but I was familiar with it. I was always sort of interested in it. I remember watching spontaneously one time in my freshman year of high school, I watched Elfen Lied. I don't know if you remember that one or not.
Yeah, the ultra-violent opening episode that pretty much everybody that got into anime eventually encountered.
Yeah, and I don't know what, it was weird because I had this, like I told you, Dragon Ball Z frightened me as a child. And honestly, there are certain things I still can't watch. Like the first episode of Attack on Titan turned me after the whole show because it was too traumatic. Ooh. I just can't, and that was like a couple months ago. Like I just can't do it. I cannot. But that being said, for some reason, Elfen Lied was fine. So I was able to get through that. And that was sort of like a turning page of like, oh, there's other stuff than just, I guess, what you would call shonen, right?
Yeah.
A couple years back, I just decided to watch Darling in the Franxx. And all of a sudden I was like, nope, here we go. We're going to watch a whole bunch of anime now. And that's, really, ever since 2017, I would say I've really dove off the deep end, to see the real experience is about,
Yeah, I can. So you have a pretty familiar thing. Now, I'm glad that Toonami existed for as long as it did to the point where it actually introduced people to anime in that way. Because I remember Toonami in the early days when, they were just showing the first couple seasons of Dragon Ball Z, like the first couple seasons of Sailor Moon, like really just getting off started with everything anime on TV. And did you ever watch all of Naruto, or did you just watch as much as you could on Toonami when you had time?
Yeah, so I was one of the people that oh god, I have actually a really terrible story I'll tell you in a second. But I was one of the people that like wanted to watch it every single week, and the way they did it was they would show you, it was one new episode a week, and of course, as you know, there was a lot of filler, so it took forever to get from one spot to the next. But I was on the edge of my seat every single week, hoping to get to a big plot point. And the way they did it back in the day was they would show, last week's episode followed by this week's episode. And then maybe some reruns later on in the night or whatever. But I remember whatever it was Saturday night, me and Jack would actually go to my dad's house and we would watch because we were super duper into like whatever was happening next. And the really bad story is that, one night my grandpa had actually passed away in the hospital. It was really sad. I didn't know him that well, to be perfectly honest with you. So it's not like I didn't love my grandpa, but it's like as a kid, you kind of don't realize the gravity of it and stuff like that. And plus, again, I didn't know him that well. My dad was pretty torn up. But I remember getting back from the hospital after all that happened, and we made it back in time for Naruto. And my dumb, 9-year-old ass was like, well, at least he died, but at least we got back in time for Naruto. It was terrible. It was like the worst possible thing my stupid kid self could say. But that's
I
the
mean, you got to
mindset that I
pass.
was in.
You said you were 9. 9
Yeah,
is what
9,
you
10.
were.
I don't know. However old I was, but I was old enough to know better that was something I shouldn't have said, but I said it anyways because whatever. So
Yeah, it's like that. I totally understand, and especially when you got something you're passionate about to a degree. I guess another thing I'm interested in is so were you into wrestling when you watched Dragon Ball Z?
No, well, yes and no. So my love of wrestling, that was more middle school. So that was whatever, what was that then? I guess I would have been 12 or 13 and some whatever, how, I don't know how you old are, how it's all a blur to me. I blocked out middle school. But I do that was around the time I really got into it. And funny enough, it was actually like the SmackDown versus Raw video games that sort of really introduced me to it. Because my cousins would play that a lot. And so I'd watch that, and that kind of made me curious. At real wrestling, I caught Monday Night Raw on television one night.
The reason I asked you that is because a lot of times, wrestling is a big part of anime and Japanese culture in general. They actually have like multiple leagues, and I believe even some American and other nationals go to Japan to participate in wrestling there.
Yeah, New Japan Pro Wrestling is huge. And even here in the States, there's a big following for it.
And so a lot of times I've actually found that a lot of Dragon Ball Z fans, people who got into Dragon Ball Z were wrestling fans to start with, in that same kind of concept that you were talking about. These characters that seemed very much like the heroes and the heels, and someone was way more powerful than the main character, and they had to work their way up and fight them, and all these like interesting story beats. And so I've had several people tell me that the writing of Dragon Ball Z actually is very similar in at certain points to the wrestling. So they actually found it and found like a connection to their first anime through their fandom of wrestling. So I was just curious if that's kind of where you landed.
Yeah, so that was not a connection I actually made until like in the past couple years. But that's absolutely true because there's so much combative storytelling, right? There's just so much that goes into making a compelling bad guy involves what in the wrestling world is called like jobbers, right? If you want to make someone look powerful, what do? You have them win. You have them win over and over and over, and you have them win a couple of rounds that are important, right? So, I mean, you look at like the Cell Saga, you see how strong Piccolo gets. Piccolo gets stronger after he, fuses with Kami. Spoilers for Dragon Ball Z. After he fuses with Kami and he gets stronger.
It's been a couple decades.
Yeah, right. We can get away with that one. But yeah, I mean, he gets stronger. He goes, and now all of a sudden he's even with Android 17. Then Cell comes along and just wipes the floor with him. It makes it seem like Cell's even that much more powerful, which that goes into like shonen power scaling, and that's a whole other story that people can complain about. But the general idea is like you make someone seem powerful by having them win a lot. And make the other characters that you actually like feel powerless to stop them. And that's when the hero comes in, usually Goku. It feels such a big moment of like, yes, finally somebody's actually going to be able to stop this guy.
Yeah, I found the connection between wrestling and a lot of anime storytelling, especially shonen in this case, like you said, to be very fascinating. And then you also have something like Dragon Ball Z. Another example is you have a rival in Vegeta. He was originally an enemy, but ends up helping because he wants to be better than Goku, but still can't do it for so long. And it has him switch sides multiple times for the sole purpose of trying to best his rival. And then, you have different storytelling. And I feel like that actually happens a lot in, like you said, competitive storytelling.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's why a lot of people relate more to Vegeta than to Goku. Why? And honestly, I agree. I think that Vegeta is a better, more well-rounded character, than Goku, because Goku really is just the, I like to fight and I'm always going to win because that's how I'm written,
I love that Goku is basically the idiot and Vegeta's the dick, and they're both the main characters of the show. And everybody's like, yes, I love Vegeta or I love Goku. And everybody forgets that Gohan tries to become the main character for a bit. And they were just like, nah, never mind.
Yeah, he peaked after Cell. He had his moment, and then it was like, no, it's Goku again. Sorry.
Yeah, that's Son Goku is always going to be the main. But so that kind of gets us into like what you started with. And, as I started a long time ago with, the old VHSs. You get
the tapes.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you could go to comic stores and get like hard subbed VHS. A lot of people have heard me talk about how much I love that animation style and just kind of that visceral style of fandom back then. And it's almost kind of sad that people don't get to experience that anymore. But I will also say that I'm glad people are getting more exposure.
Yeah, definitely. And it's funny because, and we're experiencing like a similar sort of renaissance for the old style in gaming, and that like pixel art in gaming is such a big deal nowadays. Like all these indie games are trying to replicate sort of the old style of the pixel art. And so nowadays, and you're going to see this with Komi-san as well coming out this fall, which we'll talk more about later, but that's sort of a manga and now an anime that that follows sort of that 90s style, revival of style. So that's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and God, that's going to be a good show.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it because you and I have both kept up with the manga, and it's a rare occurrence where you actually read the manga and then watch the anime. As I understand it, you're pretty much a one-on-one kind of guy.
So yeah, exactly. Well, and that's the thing, right? So like, so many people are watching an anime that I have just discovered, and they're all pissed off because this didn't go right. Like, there was a fight scene in My Hero Academia in like season 4. Lemillion had a fight that people thought was underwhelming in the show, which I understand, but at the same time, that was the first time I was exposed to it. So I was like, "Oh, cool, we're moving. Well, this is a good pace. We're moving on to the next thing." But yeah, it does change the dynamic, I think, to actually understand ahead of time what have expectations going into it.
Yeah, that's a weird dynamic to have, though. Like, I have to be honest with you, because it depending on what kind of fan you are, that can be like poison or it can be like ambrosia. Because if you have foreknowledge and you're really excited about it, and even though you know what the story beats are going to be, when it's well made, you get excited for it. You get to hear the voices, you get to hear the sound effects, and the music goes along with it. It gets really, really hype. But then you have, depending on what kind of fan you are, it can also be poison, because you can expect something to be a certain way, and it cannot go the way you expect, and you get upset about it. It's how you end up with people on Twitter being like, "I'm upset at things that didn't go exactly as the book that had no sounds or anything on it." You can tell.
I can't believe they gave us a PowerPoint presentation for this fight scene instead of exactly what it was supposed to be. Now, so I want to get your thoughts on this. Like, I feel as though it's what it really is, good or bad, for better or for worse. I feel like there is something to be said about your initial experience, even if you're experiencing what most people like. Let's say you watch Full Metal Alchemist and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, right? Brotherhood. And have you seen both of those, by the way? Have you seen either one?
I have seen the original Full Metal Alchemist anime. I own Brotherhood, but have yet to watch it. I have read the manga, though. So.
Okay. So just so you know, Brotherhood basically follows the manga to the T, right? They cut out a couple of things, but then they make nods to it, right? Like, there was one village where they went. Anyways, the initial exposure to something, whether it be the good version or the bad version, and what most people would consider it to that, I think the initial exposure was most important, because although there are some people that like harp on Full Metal Alchemist because it outpaced the manga, so it took a lot of creative choices and sort of things ended up being weird. But then Brotherhood was more close to the actual manga. There are a lot of people that swear by the original Full Metal Alchemist. I think it was better in so many ways. And I only watched Brotherhood. I never saw the original. I do think there's something to be said about like the initial exposure. What you watched first will always be your favorite, even if maybe if years pass and you go back and watch something different, it might hit different. I don't know.
My true experiment with that is going to be watching all of the Evangelion movies, because I'm so like hot and cold on Evangelion, and apparently these movies are like, after a certain period, are completely different. So I'm actually going to be doing that. But for me, on that specific example, like Full Metal Alchemist, that's always a really interesting thing. And this is also where I have a few friends that kind of say, "You just like everything. Shut up." Because I watched that series as it came out. I was getting fan subs of it.
Really?
Yeah, it was kind of like a weekly thing or a bi-weekly thing, depending on my schedule at school, where I would download these episodes. Yeah, I was one of those kids. And I'd watch it. I knew there was a point where it was going to catch up to the manga, and they decided to go with their own plot line. And I thought it was a pretty solid plot line. I enjoyed it. I didn't really feel like it was really rushed or just wrong. It just was a different take. But I was also really happy that they decided to make this story based off the manga, like the second one, Brotherhood, because it veered so into a different direction than what the original anime, because and ultimately, while the beginning is remarkably the same, the premise is still the same, right? When it veers off with the storyline, they're two like vastly different storylines, with different characters and different motivations, and so they both have their place in the fandom. And this is kind of one of those unique examples. I just think that anybody that can get their hands on the original Full Metal Alchemist should watch it from beginning to end, and then anybody that can watch Brotherhood back to back, you'll see how different it is. And I think they both have their value.
Yeah, exactly.
On that front, I got to say this is... I totally forgot my thought for a second.
It'll come back to you like after the shows. You'll be taking a shower, just like, God.
Yeah.
Can I say that? I forgot. Are y'all censored?
We're not. Okay. We're not going to bleep things out. You should know by now from listening to the episodes. We kind of curse a little bit.
Yeah, but, I kind of thought that was the case, but as soon as it came out, I was like, oh no, can I not? That just be extra work for you.
Yeah, that's that YouTuber in you. Yeah. Oh no, I might get demonetized.
Yeah, exactly, man.
So basically, the other thing is we've kind of established your origin story. We kind of went off on some thoughts on different stuff, and we'll definitely be covering some other things here in a second. But let's go ahead and do what we usually do, and we talk about what we're watching, and then we're going to talk about what we're playing. So I'm going to let you go ahead and start off the table with what you're watching right now.
What I'm watching, Bakemonogatari, which actually I finished last night. I can tell after watching all 15 episodes that one of the other parts is going to be a prequel, I assume, because they talk about things. Okay, that makes sense to me, because I asked you a couple months ago, I was like, hey man, where should I start if I want to do the Monogatari series? You told me to start there. I did. After I finished, I looked up some watch orders, and there's a lot of controversy about the correct order to watch them in. So it appears I've stumbled into a Fate series without realizing it. But there's not as many episodes, so that's helpful.
So one of the reasons why I suggested that you watch Bakemonogatari first is because my experience with the Monogatari series in general was as it was coming out. And so when it first came out, you were supposed to not see it in order. And I encourage that for anybody to view it, because you need to see things at base value for the start of the characters, but have something that they kind of hint at is somewhere in the background. Because that's what it is. It's character studies in arcs with hints of a bigger world. And for me, Bakemonogatari, if you can get through the first season and what you see is what you like, or what you like what you see.
No, you said it right.
All right. Then you're going to seek out those other ones and you will find it. And that's kind of why I suggested it.
Yeah, and that's absolutely what happened, man. So and you say case studies, and that makes sense to me because the style of it, as you know, is just so unique. And what I liked about it was that it's so very much about each individual character and what they're going through to such an extreme that they don't even have background characters, right? Anytime they want to refer to a crowd of people, it's always just some stylized cardboard cutouts that happen to fall down or something. There's one scene where the monkey paw girl is in the arcade and she turns around. There's a line behind her, but it's not real people. It's just like
silhouettes, almost just little black lines, right? And white in the middle.
Exactly. They do so much to make it feel like this is a big world, but we're only paying attention to individual characters. But no, I love the show. I had a ton of fun with it. I was a big fan of Hitagi as a person. This show, in a lot of ways, really paralleled to me Rascal Does Not Dream of Bunny Girl Senpai. I didn't realize how much influence this
I knew you'd make that connection.
Yeah. And we'll talk about that more in a bit because that's a whole other trope I was going to ask about. But I like Senju Kohara as a character. My favorite scene of that entire show was whenever they're in the car ride together and they're just bantering back and forth. And she was like, garbage. I'm sorry. I mean, Araragi-kun, how do you feel about this? He was like, did you just call me garbage? And she goes, what are you talking about? I would never say anything like that. That's unbelievable. How dare you accuse me of that? It's just
I love that she gives him shit constantly and he just goes right back with it. They're always kind of going back and forth.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Yeah. And she's not they kept calling her a tsundere, but she didn't feel like a tsundere character because she wasn't actually mean. She you could tell she was just poking fun and being kind of a little snarky, but she wasn't aggressively, ferociously tsundere. I've seen some characters where they actually hate the guy where they're like, no, but actually
Yeah, I've physically abused you, but I love you. Don't worry.
Exactly. It was a very pokey, funny kind of tsundere, which that is exactly what you want. So she was a delight as a character. I love him. Tsubasa felt bad for her. Really, really felt bad for Tsubasa. She's a cool character. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I love the show altogether. So I watched that. Long story short, I've been watching that, and I'm reading. We were talking earlier about stylistic choices and 90s and stuff. I'm reading a manga called Ichigo 100%.
Yeah,
I don't know if you've read it. Have you read it?
I read it as it was being serialized.
Really interesting.
Yes, I was so into that series, and so I was chasing down cancellations online. I was in internet relay chat IRC, getting to know random people, being like, "Hey, you got the newest chapter? Because I need it." And here's the thing: is how far along are you?
Oh gosh, I think I'm 25. I'm not super duper far in. I feel like I've been reading it a ton, but I'm not that far actually. I think I'm at the part where they actually get the film club going, and the main girl, it's been actually a week since I've read, so I can't remember anybody's names, but the girl that wants to be a writer, she's letting her hair down normally now, and then she's actually part of the film club. So it's still very, very early, but they've introduced a lot of characters. It's clearly a big hot harem now, but I'm so mad about
you're about the mid range right now.
Yeah, I guess so.
I'm not going to spoil anything for you. But this is a series that's worth reading. It subverts expectations in varying ways, and I won't expand upon that, but it's worth every read. It's easily in probably my top 20 mangas of all time.
Really?
Because of what the art style, the characters, the writing, just even the subject material. Even the jokes are funny. I like that his friends are just terrible,
Yeah.
like all the time, because that's
they
what real
suck,
friends are
dude.
like.
Yeah.
They do stuff that you're like, are you guys really friends? It's like, but when you have friends in real life that you're really close with, you kind of give each other shit. You kind of
exactly.
poke at each other a lot. So
it's very much the energy of like, what, are you going to go make more friends? No, you're not. We're going to, we're going to keep giving you shit and you're going to deal with it. Exactly. But no, I love it. It's and honestly, like, as you know, the first scene, the relevance of strawberries in this, it occurred to me like a week later. I was like, oh, Ichigo, that's like Japanese for strawberry. So that must be some indication of how this thing ends. So at least I'm hoping how it ends. You already know who I'm rooting for, I'm sure. But yeah, no, it's a good little read. I'm having fun with it, and I just need to find some more time to actually get back at it.
Yeah, you'll get to the point where when you're reading manga, you'll start reading faster. I think I said on a previous podcast, I can read a chapter in probably about like 2.5 minutes. So
Domestic Nakanojo, I definitely had that experience with. I was flying through that, dude. It
that
was
series,
a page turner.
Oh, it's so trashy. It's soap opera in manga form.
But it also doesn't perpetually stay in high school. Like, they grow up, they all have ambitions, and I loved it. And the art style, oh my god, the art was incredible.
Kei Sasuga is a great artist. She's got some good stuff going on. I think there's a competition with her. I don't know if you heard about this. She's releasing a single chapter of like 3 different series. And they're one shots, as they call them. And they're going to be published, and the readers are going to vote on which one they like the most, and that's the one she's going to make a manga out of. And
oh man,
the first 2 are completely different styles and all the like kind of like romance drama, and the other one, of course, is definitely more of what she's been doing for probably like the last 2 decades. So I'm interested to see how that goes.
As long as it's trashy and plot twisty, I'll be on that bus day one.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I was way more invested than I thought I would be in that series. And I remember you and I actually connected pretty early on, being like, you're reading that? Yes!
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Did you finish it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, good.
And that roller coaster, I thought my neck was going to break from the twists and turns on that bad boy.
I'll be honest. I hated the end, but at the same time, it wasn't about the end. It was about how we got there. And that was a f***ing ride. So.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Like, some of the plot points that happened in that series, that it came out of left field. You're like, wait, what happened? You're housing who?
It was like she was scrambling to be like, no. I have to subvert expectations, which sometimes that's good. And sometimes it's like, no. It still needs to make sense, though. Like, we got to keep it on the rails a little bit, Otherwise the roller coaster will fall off the tracks. So there's a balance. But what are you consuming right now, man?
Oh, right now, absolutely wrapped up something I talk about every week, but I wrapped up the 2nd season of Welcome to Demon School Iruma-kun.
Good for you. Good for
you. Absolutely. Well, because I told you to read the manga, because you told me I had to choose one or the other, and I desperately wanted to tell you both.
And to be clear, I do have it. Like, I'll show you proof. I don't think the viewers the listeners can see it, but I do have it like queued up here. Actually, hang on, can I show the thing? I'll put it on the camera for you to see. There it is. Boom. See, I got it. It's there.
Yeah,
I just haven't actually started it yet. Well, I got like half a chapter in, I think. I maybe got 1 chapter in, but then Chainsaw Man got a hold of me, and that was it.
Oh, yeah. I need to go through Chainsaw Man before the anime comes up. I'm looking forward to Mappa really putting some quality into that. So I wrapped up with Welcome to Demon School Iruma-kun, and then I caught up on Athena, Pirate Princess, the kind of like partnership between Crunchyroll and Adult Swim that got like all this like pedigree talent in it. And I have to say that is a really good show.
Was it really?
It starts out kind of like on a high point, and then it kind of slows down for a bit, and then it goes just balls to the wall. Like, it's really well paced. Comedy's pretty good. Drama's pretty good. There's interesting characters, and the animation is on point. It's Production IG. So I don't know if you've ever heard of these guys, but they've been doing anime for a long time, and it's really high quality. I mean, it's just to me, they're on the same par as like UFO Table, where you get that almost like cinema quality animation, but not quite. And it looks really good. And it's a lot of fun. So I can't recommend that series enough, especially because some of the twists and turns that start happening in it and the world it's slowly building, it becomes more and more interesting with each passing episode.
Can you give me like the premise? Because I've just heard the name and that it's good.
Oh, okay. So Athena, Pirate Princess is essentially about this girl who, as a child, like she's with her father on a ship, and it gets attacked, and they throw her in a boat, and they're like, "Go, save yourself!" And they tell her to go to Eden. Not really a spoiler. It literally is like the second line in the first episode.
Sure.
So she
You've
ends up
ruined the
washing up
experience.
somewhere. Yeah, absolutely. You don't have to watch it anymore. But she basically washes up on the shore and she gets put in a brothel, like as a child. So she's like, they basically show that she's survived in the brothel and she's finally of age, and they're basically she's basically being sold off to the highest bidder. And it turns out she's actually this really goofy girl who's been planning escape methods for like years and failing miserably. And it all comes together in this plot point where she actually ends up meeting these old guys who were somebody that knew her dad, and they help her escape. And then there's another group of like pseudo ninjas that are, servants of the family, and they help her escape. And then she's basically tasked with finding, there's this like artifact that she has, and she's tasked with finding out where it came from. And of course, then all of a sudden the British Navy is involved and pirates are involved. And
good Lord.
Yeah, it's really kind of, and it spends a good like first 4, maybe 5 episodes kind of letting you see little glimpses of different parts of the story. And you're like, who's this? Like, why do they care? And then it all starts to come together right around like episode 6, I think.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and then it doesn't stop. Like you start getting revelation after revelation, and it ends up not kind of like holding on for too long. So that's why I liked it. There's enough mystery in the first like 2.5 hours of the series. And then it's like, all right, here's plot points. Let's fucking go.
Gotcha.
And there's action, and it's a lot of fun. I don't feel like I really ruined too much there. So also, I'm going to say this for you. If you do check out the first episode, the 2 servants that end up helping her, just think Mario and Luigi. Someone on Twitter ruined this shit for me.
Oh God. Now this is it like you can never unsee it.
Oh yeah, I'll show you a picture after we finish recording, and it's like they're named like Franz and something else, and it's completely silly, and you don't think about it. And then someone posted a picture of them on the internet and was like, "Is anybody else seeing Mario and Luigi?" And I was like, "Shit, I'm never gonna see this any other way ever again."
It's like the FedEx arrow in the logo; you can never unsee it.
Oh yeah, that's right. I do remember that. I do see it every time.
Yeah.
But that's primarily what I've been catching up on. I haven't got to watch a lot this week because I've been taking care of the podcast and various other things. Yeah. But in terms of other stuff, I did read. I haven't read it. Wow, this has been the lightest week I've ever had. I don't have anything else. We're just going to have to talk about what the hell you're playing right now.
Your face was just like this realization of like, my God, that's really it.
Like, I'm going to have to stop what I'm doing for the rest of the day and just read manga and watch anime.
Just catch up on something, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I hear you. I got to get caught up on My Hero Academia. I know it's they're in the whatever like the 5th season. I don't even know. I think they might be done for the season. Maybe they have a couple of episodes left. They are done.
They are. They announced the 6th season on the last episode.
Okay, awesome. Do we know when that's going to come out yet, or do we have a window?
Probably around April next year, I would imagine. They need to put enough time into it to make sure that it doesn't catch up to the manga too fast, because then you start running into Dragon Ball Z and Naruto problems. And I don't think Horikoshi wants to do that. What I am hoping for is the Vigilante spin-off manga getting in an anime. Have you read that at all?
No.
Yeah. There's an entire My Hero Academia Vigilantes, and it's about other characters that are basically using their powers to help people around in the community and stuff like that, and save people, but they're not licensed and they're not part of any organization, so they're viewed just as poorly by pro heroes as they are by villains and things like that. And it's basically about these like 3 kind of hapless heroes that do different things with their powers to help the community, and they decide to form like a vigilante group. And then they start crossing over with the main series characters. Like they encounter Eraserhead, Endeavor, Ingenium, like his not the class rep guy, his older brother before he gets injured in one chapter. So so they are, it's crossing over, and you're seeing like the world beforehand, but these characters have a bigger stake. And at first it was kind of goofy and like a little bit jokey, and then it really evolved into its own story, and it's really good. And the main character, his persona is Crawler, and his only ability is at the start is essentially he has the ability to create fields that let him glide along the ground. So like it basically,
dog, I want that so bad.
And he's basically kind of like Spider-Man, because then he can glide up walls and stuff like that too.
Oh, it's so cool.
Yeah, it's only in manga form right now, and it's probably got like 12 or 13 volumes, like close to about 100 chapters, and it's a good read. I didn't expect it to be as good as it ended up being.
Man, interesting. I mean, it's only the world's most popular anime, right? So you think if they wanted to do it, they totally could. They've got the funds to make it happen.
Yeah, I honestly think, they're being smart about it, like kind of in that same way JoJo was really smart about it. Like they didn't just power through too fast. Because I mean, he's still got. I think he just wrapped up the most recent part, but they still have Stone Ocean, and then
and that's coming soon too.
Yeah, and they have
it's gonna be a Merry Christmas this year.
Yes, it is going to be a great Christmas this year. There's all kinds of good anime coming out. Before then, let's talk a little bit of games before we get into our main topic.
Okay, let's do that.
All right, what are you playing? Because you are the guy that talks games. So tell me games.
I am, or at least I should be. I think I am, anyways. As far as what I've been playing lately, it honestly has not been a lot. I'm playing, I'm playing a lot, but not playing very much at all. So I've been playing a lot of Smash because I'm kind of finding my way back into that. I'm potentially playing with a new main, but I'm not gonna make that public just in case Jesse is listening to this because he's the one I'm trying to answer with this. But,
for those that don't know, our friend Jesse is ridiculously good at Smash Brothers.
He's Diesel.
Yeah.
And to be honest, like Jesse, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry, but like he is extremely good. But I have played better, and I have beaten him before. But I think he just kind of has my number right now. Like he feels attainable. Like I feel like I can be that good, and that's why I'm trying so hard. But anyway, so I've been playing some Smash. I'm also playing Metroid Prime, which has been a delight. I didn't realize this, but last year I played a lot of Hollow Knight, much to Trea's dismay. I played a lot of Hollow Knight last year. Love it. Jack's playing it right now. He's been texting me. And it didn't occur to me because I also last year or the year before last played Metroid Samus Returns. I don't think I realized it, but I think I actually really quite like Metroidvanias. Mm-hmm. Every time in the past they've been proposed, like you need to go play Ori and the Blind Forest, you need to go play Axiom Verge. I've always kind of been like, yeah, but actually when I start playing them, I love them. So and Metroid Prime is the first one I've ever played that's been in first person, and it's so good. The soundtrack is spectacular. It gives you like just enough hints, because the thing about Metroidvanias is, do you handhold the player along, or do you reward them for remembering? Oh, I can go back this way because I have this power up now. It's all about locks and keys. You get a power up, you go back to a place you were before, you open up a new section. So it's sort of like, how much help do you give the player? But Metroid Prime is really good because all it does is just gives you one section and it's like, hey, there's something interesting over here. Go check it out. But you don't necessarily have to do that, right? You can go back and go, there's secrets. You can go back and unlock other things. It just sort of gives you like, hey, if you absolutely want to progress and nothing else, go here. And I really like that because it keeps me from getting lost, because I can get lost. But it keeps you, and which, to be fair, getting lost is okay, but only to a certain degree. I never want to be like clueless of what to do next, you know?
Yeah, Metroidvanias are a unique experience to me because they are equal parts platforming in a lot of cases. They're equal parts RPG in a lot of experiences these days. Like for me, like Castlevania Symphony of the Night really did kind of change the playing field for a lot of that stuff. Mm-hmm. Of course, Super Metroid did as well. That's where and these are the two games that everybody uses as the reference point for the name.
Yeah, the quintessential Metroidvanias. Yeah,
absolutely. And the thing is, there's just countless ones of them out there, and they are, all pretty damn good. Mm-hmm. Like I can recommend probably like 6 or 7 right now. Guacamelee. There is Dust and Elysian Tale. You have, of course, Bloodstained, and then you have Axiom Verge.
Axiom Verge 2 now.
Oh, yeah. There's a sequel to that. And there's just countless ones. I mean, of course, not even withstanding, Metroid Dread's coming up. Metroid Samus Returns, as you said, was like a really good one. Mm-hmm. They're releasing the Castlevania Advance Collection, which pretty much every one of those advanced Castlevania games was essentially a Metroidvania.
Yes. Yeah. And that was so well, too.
Yeah. Spoiled for content.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
And I think it kind of, depending on which one, it gives a different kind of, I guess, dopamine hit for people.
Sure, yeah.
Some of them are like really RPG heavy, like you get equipment, experience points, and you equip magic and things of that nature. So the person that's an RPG person and like likes to collect things, like Bloodstained's going to really hit you good. Hollow Knight is kind of that. There's some basic accessories, but a lot of it's about exploration and challenging yourself to some really intense battles and atmosphere.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that.
So Dark Souls fans can really get something out of that game. And I think that it just ends up being such a versatile genre that it's easy for almost anybody to get into. You can skip some of those Metroidvanias, but I bet you can find at least a few that you're really, really going to enjoy.
Yeah. And for me, the big appeal is always the exploration part and how it feels to be in that place, right? Because if it's an open world game, you can even though it sort of almost plays like a Metroidvania in that things unlock as you go along, the world gets bigger. Whenever when it's a Metroidvania, you're underground, right? You're underground, you're in some sort of place. It feels more like you're trapped and you're sort of unlocking ways to get out of here, right? Which I kind of like that because, or what I like about that more specifically is whenever it feels like it's a place that you actually quite enjoy being, right? Even though you're technically like trapped in Hollow Knight and trapped in Metroid Prime, it's very much just such a, for lack of a better way to say it, it's such a vibe to be there. You know, the music is sensational. You feel things when you're walking around looking at stuff. So for me, Metroidvania is about like, I'm going to be spending a lot of time in this place, unraveling it. I want to enjoy being here. Because if I feel, you know, too threatened, or if I feel too lost, or if I feel too frustrated, I'm not going to be here. I like the sensation of wanting to be in the place that a Metroidvania is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's clear that you definitely have a bit of a, you know, fascination with it right now. So, what else are you really touching on lately? Anything else?
Let's see. So Metroid Prime, I played playing a little on stream. I'm playing a little bit of Find Love or Die Trying. It's a dating sim. It's really dumb. Highly recommend. I won't say too much more. You've been watching it.
Yeah, I have
check
been.
That out. It's really trippy. It's really fun. I keep expecting it to be Doki Doki and instantly be like a surprise horror game, but we'll see what happens.
I feel like it's not. I feel like from watching the stream, I feel like it's going to be exactly what it is, and it's having fun with it, and that's what I'm really expecting. But we will see. Clearly, so you kind of have a pot right now of
I do
Smash, Metroidvania, and visual novels, because I was there for your stream where everybody was voting on games, and
Gonna start eastward. Gonna start eastward very soon. Gonna start potentially God of War pretty soon, because I really want to play the God of War 2. That I saw that trailer and I was like, what am I waiting around for? I still need to play God of War.
Seriously, you can get that game for like $15 to $20.
That's what I'm saying, right? So at this point, I have no excuse. So that's what I'm doing looking forward. But what are you, man? What are you playing? Actually, I know what you're playing.
I'm about to open a can on you.
Here we go.
I am playing Atelier Ryza, which is part of our book club, which you should also be playing.
Notice how I did not list that game.
Yes, I did notice that. But now you can't escape. So I have to ask you, like, how far are you in the game?
So I'm only, I think I'm still like on chapter 1 or chapter 2. Like, it's extremely early. I just learned how to do alchemy, and so I'm gathering ingredients, and I hate it. Like, I want to vomit every time I walk around. I'm like, okay, let me get some ingredients. She kind of runs along. And oh my God. So you weren't there this night, but it was me, Will, Steven, not you. It was me, Will, Spencer, the other S person, and Shane. We have a lot of S people. That's what threw me off. And we were on the Discord. We were playing Smash, and I just went off on a rant on why. So I will try to replicate why Atelier Ryza for the show. Pisses me off so much. All right. So here's the thing. Have you played Ghost of Tsushima?
Yeah, of course.
You played Breath of the Wild.
Absolutely.
Okay. So in both of those games, if you run by something that you can pick up, right, like a lizard in Breath of the Wild, a weed, a flower, whatever, what do you do in Breath of the Wild when that happens?
You just hit a button.
You hit a button, do. You keep running. All right. Ghost of Tsushima, you run by a weed, a flower you want to pick up. What do you do?
Just grab it with the button.
You hit a button, it comes right up. Actually, it's not in Tsushima. It's like, like it's very pleasant. In Atelier Ryza, to simply do, which by the way, that's a side effect. That's one of the several things you do in Ghost of Tsushima and Breath of the Wild and lots of open world games. But in Atelier Ryza, what you do as a central feature is grab and find things to use alchemy for. So a lot of this game, correct me if I'm wrong, is going to be picking up items that you use for alchemy, right?
Right.
That process, because it is one of the most important things you do, should be fun, should be enjoyable, or at least at the very least should be out of your mind. You're not worried about it that much. It should be effortless, right? But no, Steven. Instead, I have to walk up. She has to stop her entire animation of walking, and then she has to hit it. Or sometimes you have to charge it. Or she has to stand there and then reach down very slowly, grab it, and then the animation has to end after a lot of stale frames, and then finally you can start moving again. And all I want to do is pick it up. But she has to I'm just going to walk up. I'm going to stop for a second. Now I'm going to reach down. I'm going to grab it. I'm going to think about it. Okay, now I can start walking again. And then you have to, and that's a central part of the game. Like, honestly, that's really what, I don't understand alchemy yet. I'm sure I will understand it in time. The plot, I'm sure I'll get in time. But I think that might be my biggest pet peeve.
So what's your biggest pet peeve with the game is not the actual game itself, it's the quality of life features in the game.
I think, thank you, therapist Stephen. I think that's exactly what it is. I think that might be the biggest thing.
That's the thing is like I've been an Atelier series fan for a lot of years, and trust me, you're not the first person that I've suggested the game to, and they come back and they go, "I hate this. I hate everything
Really?
about it." Absolutely, no. You are like number 27 in the list. Everybody comes back.
Radio.
It's clear to me because, and that's the thing is like I suggest this game because I'm very much a crafting and gathering kind of person. Yeah. I like those elements in games, which is hilarious because I can't stand certain things like Minecraft, for instance. And there's a game called Valheim that's really huge, and apparently it's more
than that. So.
No, there is no waifus in that, which is some bullshit. But no, the general concept of the game does appeal to me, but it's more of a multiplayer thing because it literally encourages you to be multiplayer to be efficient. These games are, and I started with the series with Atelier Ryza, which actually, not Atelier Ryza. Oopsie. That's the opposite direction. Atelier Iris. And those games were single player, traditional story-based RPG with the alchemy built into it. And you did gather items from sparkling points as you went around the environment. And that's where it really got me, like fun characters and kind of this like down home kind of feeling of creating things. Yeah. I can agree with you. It is a little bit clunky. And I think the reason for that is to emulate that whole idea of like, I'm an alchemist. I'm going to go gather things. So I'm going to actually like animate, gathering stuff.
Yeah. I see what the intention is.
Yeah, could it be faster? Could it be more efficient? Absolutely. And there are systems that are built into the game that actually speed that up as you get further in. Like because I don't care about spoiling it because this isn't like a spoiler thing for this story. You get like a garden. Like you can start making you getting seeds and you can grow your ingredients. You get the ability to use these bottles where it makes a world where all you do is go in and gather ingredients real quick. And there's a couple enemies in there. And so depending on what item you put in, it depends on what you get out of it.
Yeah.
For me, like the biggest thing is you're so far at the beginning and the characters are kind of annoying at the beginning because it is basically a coming of age story and it expands. And so
they have
for me,
like grow on you, you know?
Yeah, and that's the thing is like I told Trea this in a previous podcast is the whole setting is on this island and an adjacent mainland, and like you're in this small village that you know everybody, you've grown up with everybody, and as you do like the side quests, you get to know more about the people around you, and that's kind of like the joy of playing.
Oh God, there's side quest minus 10 points.
Yes. Whatever. All you do is create something and go turn it in. It's not even hard. Actually, some of them are literally just listening to a story like conversation, and then they're like, "Here's 30 coal. Thanks for listening." And that's the money in the game.
That's very sweet, but that's assuming I care. You know what I mean?
Like, I swear to God, like, you know what the worst part of this is? I for those who don't know, we're gonna cover it at the end. Daryl's a YouTuber and he talks about games clearly, because he's Daryl Talks Games. You talk about story elements all the time and how much you love story and atmosphere. And this is like the one game where you're like, fuck story, fuck character development, fuck these people.
Man. Look, man, when I'm jaded, I'm jaded, dude. Like I said, I mean, and I joke, I kid. Like I do think that I will sit down at some point. I'll get to a point where even if I'm not really having fun, I'll at least be like, all right, I understand what's happening here. I can appreciate this for what it is. There are elements that I don't hate actually about this, so I will see it through. And that's just a point that I kind of get to with a game after playing it enough. It's cognitive. It's sunk cost fallacy, right? Like I'm already this far in. Let me just go ahead and finish it out. And honestly, because you don't want to feel like you hated yourself, you find things to like about it, right? So the whole cognitive dissonance thing of like, yeah, okay, well, you know what? Maybe I did actually enjoy this. Maybe I didn't hate this as much as I thought I did, and that it keeps you in there,
All right, so we definitely established that it's going to be a bit of a ride for you, but I'm hoping that you'll come around. So I've had you on this podcast for 47 minutes so far, and we have not even remotely hit the main point of why you wanted to talk about yourself. We've just been spinning off into the distance.
A heated debate about Atelier Ryza real quick, and
oh yeah, absolutely. This is exactly how all of our episodes go, so don't be surprised.
Well, it should be.
You messaged me and said you wanted to talk about like what we've been playing, what we've been watching, and some of that, and kind of like your origin story. But you also wanted to talk about some anime tropes that you had some questions about.
Yes. So now that all the pleasantries are out of the way, I do have to ask you this some I don't want to call this trivia, more just things that I don't fully understand about anime, right? And to give you some context for what brought this to my mind was that there are times whenever I am watching anime that I understand when I'm watching a dub, things are said sometimes weirdly because being dubbed over a previous lip sync in Japanese. I understand that's why things have to be said weird. I understand there are some things culturally about Japan I just won't get. There are inside jokes, by the way, especially in Monogatari because it is very like language heavy. They talk a lot about like how certain characters can be seen this way or that way depending on how they're written, and so that's very poetic about the situation they're dealing with. I see moments like that, and I think, okay, this is something that I just truly cannot understand unless I speak Japanese, unless I am engulfed in Japanese culture. And I accept that and move on. There are things, and I'm sure you understand as well, there are things when you watch an anime, you just go, okay, I don't fully understand this reference. I don't fully get this. I'm sure it would be great if I was Japanese watching this, but I don't get it. And that's okay. And you get to the bigger plot points and you're happy and everything's fine and hunky-dory. But there are some things that still I scratch my head at, and I got to ask you, why is this a thing? So we'll call that segment why is this a thing? Welcome to Why Is This a Thing? So thing number one, head pats. Explain. Because in America, at no point do you walk up to someone that you have any type of affection for and pat them on the head. I mean, I do it now because I do it in anime, but I don't understand why they're doing it in the first place. Like, why did it become a thing?
so give me an example of a head pat within anime that makes you go, why?
Okay. Let me think about this for a second. Okay, well, look, we both love Komi-san, right? So in Komi-san, she doesn't talk, whatever. Because she has a sort of an anxiety disorder or whatever the case is. So in one episode, she tried really hard to do something, as is often the case. She's very ambitious. She wants to do well, but of course she's shy, right? And then Tadano-san, he's very kind. He's very nice to her. And because he wants to congratulate her on like a job well done, he like head pets her and she freaks the fuck out, right? Like, and that's exactly how it goes every time in anime or manga. The head pat happens from the love interest or whoever, even if it's like an older brother figure. And the girl's like, oh my God, I can't believe a head pat. It's the second coming of Christ. Like, it's just the biggest thing in the world to me, to them. So I'm just trying to understand, is that a thing? Do Japanese folks actually do head pats? Is it a thing that is specific to anime? Why does this exist, Stephen?
In my experience, a lot of times that doesn't happen in real life. Like, I've encountered various Japanese people throughout my life, exchange students from that country, and they don't do that naturally. And in a lot of like live action shows, they don't do that either. I think that it's actually just imagery to kind of show a certain affection for somebody, kind of like oh, you're adorable sort of thing. And of course, like anytime like somebody has an interest or even like kind of an affectionate association with it, they can feel shy about it. They can react to it because it's like, oh, I had no idea that this person was going to do this thing. So they kind of bounce off of that. But I can tell you, in my experience, it's not a real world thing. It happens to be more of an anime and manga thing, just for passing a certain kind of emotion or feeling. And I think a lot of what Japanese manga and anime, they do a lot of kinetic kind of reactions.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So like if you would pet a dog on the head, it'd be like, oh, you're an adorable dog. I'm not saying that the character's calling them a dog, but it's the same feeling of like, this person is adorable. I can't help myself.
Right.
It kind of, and of course the character is going to elicit a reaction from that. So no, that's not a thing that's common in Japanese culture, as far as I'm aware of. It might be a thing in Akihabara as part of like some kind of like, I saw this in anime, so I'm going to do anime things in real life.
Sure.
Inevitability. So yeah, I'd say you're fine there. Like, what else you got for me?
Cool. All right. And by the way, you don't have to have like a perfect answer for all these, because I'm sure there are some that you just may be like, I have no clue. But that was a good answer, like Family Feud. Good answer. And just to kind of bounce off the whole like kinetic thing of like, yeah, that's so true about anime too, because it's hard to do subtle facial expressions and it's hard to communicate non-verbally in anime. So something like that is very like visual. So I appreciate that. That's cool. Okay, cool. Okay, so here's another one. Along the same lines, and I'll just keep this very straightforward. Can you explain the fascination that some anime have? This is one that almost makes me turn off. Can you explain the fascination with the little sister, big brother thing? You know what I'm talking about. Why is this a thing? Can you explain to me?
This is just a weird fetish frankly, but they do have fun making jokes out of like the closeness of brothers and sisters. Like, they call them sister cons and oni cons and like one cons and things like that. Just basically, you're way too close with your sibling. It's kind of weird, and we're gonna make fun of you for it. But as for the whole little sister thing, it really just kind of boils down to kind of a weird fetish thing, as far as I can tell. There's not a lot of cultural connectivity between like, oh, this is a thing that happens a lot in real life, so it's being displayed in this form. No, this is just kind of a weird thing. Now, anime does have a history. Go ahead.
I feel like that would be a bigger news headline if it was like, oh man, the Japan has this weird problem with little sisters. Like, it feels like that'd be a headline or something.
I mean, I've seen in the past, like some articles and things that I've read have like reached out and found specific cases of weird stuff that has happened and tried to explain it in a way that this is actually pretty common. And I'm like, I really don't buy that. What I buy more is that anime loves to kind of touch on risque topics, and we won't even get into hentai. That's a whole other animal.
Right.
But anime does touch on taboo topics. I don't know what to say. If we go on too long, we're going to run out of topics, and then it's just going to be hentai from that point on. But they do cover a lot of taboo topics in anime. You talk about teacher and student relationships. You talk about, there is a certain degree of kind of like non-blood related, like sister complexes and brother complexes. And then you get into things like Kiss X Sis, where it's kind of like, okay. But these are very specific examples. I don't feel like it's a common thing. I think the little sister thing is really just kind of, it gives a trope for a bit. Like, it's not as common as it is.
And like I said, you don't see it as like a legit plot point. It's almost sort of always used as like a humorous sort of like a, it's comic relief. But it's so jarring if you're not expecting that. Like that's not the type of joke that if you're trying to show a friend an anime that's never watched anime before, they're going to be on board with. They're going to see that and be like, what the f are you making me watch? You know what I mean? It's going to have that kind of a landing to it.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of content out there that's mainstream that really addresses that in a big way. I think that Arrow Manga Sensei, Ore Imo, and A Little Sister Is All You Need are like the last popular Little Sister series I've seen in like the last decade or so that have really kind of stuck out. So when you compare that to the sheer number of anime that are being released and a lot of the topics that are covering, it really just comes down to like fetish stuff, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, right? Like, surely it's just like, I don't know. It's either that or it has to be just, this is a joke that landed really funny one time and it became a thing, and suddenly it became like, everyone's going to make this joke now because it was really popular at one point, and maybe it'll die out in a couple of years. I don't know.
Yeah, most of the time, these are people that are, the people writing this don't have siblings, so,
Yeah, so what are you going to do?
Like, when you have a sibling, you're like, oh, no.
Right. Here's one that is this may require a little bit of medical expertise, to be honest with you. Why are nosebleeds a reaction to seeing something risque for characters in anime? I don't understand this.
So that's kind of like it's another cultural thing. That's like, I don't know if like Japanese are very into like blood types, for instance.
Yeah, I do know about that. So apparently blood type is extremely closely related to personality.
Yeah, they actually, like, that's a huge thing still. Like the rest of us are just like, that's what you need if you need a blood transfusion. But the Japanese are very much into like a lot of association with it, personality types and things. But the nosebleed,
which is fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's no different than somebody being like, look at the alignment of the stars. I'm a Taurus, and because of that, I like green tea. I don't know. The nosebleed has more to do with like kind of like the idea of high blood pressure, essentially.
Okay.
So like, think about it, like you get excited, so the blood pressure increases, and so it can result in like a nosebleed sort of thing. To me, it was always used as kind of an excuse to show arousal without actually showing anything inappropriate.
Sure.
I think fan service, even back in the day, had the nosebleed. And if you wanted to send that message, again, this is another case of like kinetic and visual storytelling in the case of manga and anime. I mean, clearly you can definitely show cleavage, but you don't know if the character's going to react. How would you show a character reacting to getting excited about cleavage? Well, you got things like nosebleeds.
Well, you can't like show like just the anime dude like popping a boner. That would be a little bit
right.
I mean, I guess
specific animes. I mean, yeah. But that's the thing, is like when you that gets into the concept of like, what hour is your anime on? There's sure. Like, I don't know if you know, there's shonen, which is supposed to be for like teenagers and young boys. There's seinen, which you might be able to get away with more adult humor, but of course that means your show's now going to be on at 11 o'clock at night, not 7 p.m. So you get into more complex thoughts there, but I think it was probably more visual storytelling without being inappropriate.
Yeah. I think honestly, if you can categorize it similar to like the head pad of like this is a visual way to show something that we want to communicate in sort of like an animated manner. It's just funny to me because like that's never a reaction I have ever had to a situation like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I've never been like, oh, like it's never been that.
Yeah, no, and most people really don't run into that issue. Anemia is a very common tool to show a reaction to things as well.
I don't know if I've ever heard the sentence anemia as a tool before. First time for
Yeah.
everything. We'll take it.
Yeah. I just need to show you Excel Saga. That's all.
Gotcha. Okay, and this is kind of like the main event of all the tropes I was going to ask you about, and I think this one is less goofy, perverted style anime question. This is like a legit, interesting question. I think maybe. In fact, I was considering doing a video on this because there might be some psychology involved. But there's been this thing I've seen. Speaking of Bakemonogatari, speaking of Rascal Does Not Dream, Bunny Girl Senpai, speaking of Persona, right? There's this whole thing about like, so in Bakemonogatari, I guess spoilers, Tsubasa's whole event that she has stems from her stress, right? Sengoku, who is the girl, and she has this thing for Senjoku so her spawns is like this. She goes crazy. Basically, there's physical symptoms because of specific things that are happening. And Bunny Girl Senpai, the main character, she had some symptoms like no one could see her, right? No one could see her because she felt like no one could see who she really was. They just saw like the famous person or whatever. In Persona, you have all these distorted wishes and all these really, really terrible thoughts that are manifesting in this sort of pseudo realistic world of outward manifesting of like how they actually feel, their palace, right? So I was wondering if there's anything, because I know in Japan it's Shintoism, I believe, is like the prevailing theology. Is there anything that connects all of those, like that of? Like, is there any sort of trope in Shintoism that's a thing? Am I grasping at straws here? Do you see what I'm saying? Like, is there something there?
So to answer your question, I really can't comment on the association with Shinto. It's a religion I would have to do some research on, and I just don't feel comfortable really commenting on without any kind of knowledge. Yeah. But I would definitely say that Japan has a fascination with psychological trauma and grief and things like that manifesting in physical ways. And I think that's a lot of things that are happening with like Bakemonogatari, even Persona. Like traumatizing desires in this case are really what manifests in, say, Persona. A lot of times, clearly it was the 7 deadly sins in this case, greed and pride and all that. They cause a lot of trauma to people, and then they suffered trauma whenever their illusion was broken. So a lot of cases in these stories, you really address that. Bakemonogatari it tries to sell it as supernatural, but every character has some kind of burden or psychological issue that they're suffering from, and it manifests.
They're carrying something.
They manifest as a supernatural element. And so it for storytelling elements, it allows to tell like kind of a deep character story without getting overly serious, and allows you to do fun things with it, right? Same thing with like Persona. You created a world where you can address these topics. I mean, it covers a lot of stuff in terms of like teachers abusing students, using their power. You have all the different kind of concerns that society over there may have, and they address a lot of, especially young people for that matter.
Right.
And they give it like physical manifestation, and you can fight it, and you can make changes with these characters. And, that's, kind of a rewarding experience. And then, Bunny Girl Senpai is definitely like, it had a character, it had this whole trauma of not being seen because of a certain factor. And so it manifested itself, in the real world, again, for more storytelling elements. But again, you could see psychological trauma, desires that cause trauma, like tend to be manifested in a physical way. And that is a very common trope. And it actually extends all the way back to some of their writing. There's a author, I hope I don't butcher his name, is Osamu Dazai. He has a famous novel called No Longer Human.
Oh, interesting.
And Junji Ito actually did a manga version of it, but it is about a guy who's basically like he has trouble connecting with humans. It shows how he goes through and sees things and does things that are probably not normal. And then he has relationships with other people, and it continues to manifest in different ways that drive him to basically like do other terrible things, or finally like just let it go. Like,
right.
There's a manga called Eating Crab with the Yuki-onna.
Oh, I've heard of that.
Yes. It's a very good series, but it's based about a guy who's fed up with his life and he's miserable. And so he decides to rob somebody, and basically robs this woman. And she's like, well, before I die, I just want to eat crab. So if you're going to kidnap me, I'll pay the fees and things like that. We'll go do this. And so he ends up on this road trip. He's effed up in the head and she's weird about being totally cool with this. They do all kinds of other stuff. And, it has that same kind of like ennui, that you get from people who are suffering in a certain way and they're trying to find a way out of it, but it manifests. And I think that's just a common thing in Japanese literature and storytelling. Mm-hmm. It's a very Japanese thing to do. I mean, Haruka Narukami, a lot of her writing is, I'm pretty sure it's a her, is kind of like that too. It's very traumatic, but then characters go through things and kind of come to a conclusion. Not always a happy conclusion for that matter. Right. I don't know if you ever heard the series Oyasumi Punpun.
I have. It's on my list. I have it like literally downloaded. I need to read it at some point, but everyone swears by that one.
It's an experience. Like it's not a feel-good experience necessarily all the way through.
Right. Yeah.
It's a great piece of literature.
I'm prepared for to be hurt.
Yeah, I think it's just a really common trope for them to address feelings. Like now we're getting into like me commentating on it. Like I'm not. There's no scientific proof of this.
Right. Yeah.
My view is that it's easier for people to deal with that when they write it out or they connect it to a fantastical element.
Yeah.
I recently watched Unsolved Mysteries on Netflix, and they have an episode about the tsunami in Japan during 2011, where they had that 9.0 earthquake, and then the tsunami came on the shore, and they shortly started seeing sightings of ghosts all throughout the area. People turning up and saying like, "Do you have any dry clothes at their door?" And then they, give them the clothes, and then they would disappear, and different things like that.
Oh, I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
And it's interesting because they kind of address it with like a monk who practices Buddhism and helps people come to terms with their loss. And so that's part of the episode. But then there's another one that's like, this is kind of like a community-based PTSD, and like that's how they deal with it. Mm-hmm. And it was a really kind of interesting perspective to take into it. So I feel like a lot of times when trauma hits a community and just people in Japanese area, I mean, I'm sure there's other people that do this too, but a lot of times in terms of like fiction and things of that nature, they kind of associate the fantastical with that trauma. Yeah. And I think that's what you're seeing here.
Yeah.
It's been going on for decades.
Well, first of all, thank you for telling me all that, because I didn't realize it was that established of a trope. I almost thought I was reaching, I saw it being sort of common between those, like the three examples I mentioned, but to know that it goes that far back, like there was a book written about it, I guess it just must have, caught on at some point, and as tropes do. But that's so interesting. And I think it's also a testament to like in Western media, right? What typically is the case is someone goes through something, right? And the entire show is like how they respond. It's usually some sort of story of redemption, some sort of story of like them going through new challenges that like replicate what they've already gone through to see if they can make a better decision the second time around, right? But I think that's one of the reasons that I think a lot of people are drawn to anime and sort of like Japanese portrayals of those type of things, because instead of it being more of like a real world approach, it sort of illustrates more colorfully, more like fantastically sort of what you're going through, right? Like Shinjuku Hara, like feeling weightless because I actually forgot what her trauma was, but like that's so much more of a dramatic example of it, but it might be almost more relatable because that sort of might be how someone could feel given the certain circumstances. So yeah, it's a really interesting topic. And in fact, like I said, I was thinking about maybe doing a video on it at some point. So if I do that, I will certainly get back with you so we can touch base on those examples.
Absolutely.
And we'll do all that. But it's so interesting to think about, man. Because like I say, I do think it really touches on the Western versus the Eastern portrayal of how people deal with those things. You don't, a lot of times in like Western culture, you don't get sort of some of like the dream sequences of, or some of the more fantastical sort of versions of people dealing with something that you would in Eastern. So it's an interesting topic.
Yeah. It's something that really requires a little bit, if you ask me, a little bit more research and just like care.
Yes.
It's definitely like one of those kind of like wonderful things. Like I'd like to, write an essay or something on it. It's really fascinating. It goes back so many years and has so many examples. But yeah, so that kind of like covers most of the tropes you had questions about, or you got another like secret one?
No, that was it. I was going to ask maybe about Kill la Kill and like nudity, but apparently in Japan, like nudity just is less embarrassing than it is here. Like it's more of like a jokey thing. Whereas I guess over here, it's more of like a, oh no type beat,
I think that has more to do with just other cultures in general. Like Europe is much more welcoming of nudity and things like that, because a lot of other countries view it as just like part of the body.
Yeah.
like you can watch old anime and they actually animate like little kids that have penises, and the breasts are not like obscured or anything like that, because it's like this is just a thing they have. They're taking a bath. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you? It's not sexual.
I'll never forget as a kid watching like a DVD of Dragon Ball Z and like just seeing Baby Goku's wiener just out there. I was like, wow, that's just it really threw me off growing up. I was like, well, I guess that's cool. Whatever. It's just different.
I've been to Europe several times, and I remember especially a specific time in Turkey, like I walked by a newsstand and there's just breasts on exposure. Like it's no big deal. Yeah. Like no one's like, it feels like it's one of those things that when you experience a different culture that has no problem with it, that you kind of realize you're like, are we just like everybody else? Are we like puritanical? Like,
yeah, like,
what's happening here? There's definitely extremes, sure. There's levels. So that's a whole topic for another time. It seems like we've been talking forever already. So I'm going to go ahead and get us to the end of it here. We will definitely maybe have to have you on for another show to talk about some more topics.
All set, man. I got a notebook.
You got a notebook?
Yes, sir.
So do I. I got like a whole thing. The thing I did want to mention to people is, as we've kind of hinted at throughout the episode, because we know each other so well, Daryl has a YouTube channel, a well-regarded YouTube channel called DarylTalksGames, where he covers the psychology associated with gameplay and also gives some people some motivation using that same kind of content. It's greatly edited and it's well made, and I think that everybody should definitely check it out if you get the chance on YouTube. I think what I really wanted to kind of cover there is, so you definitely can talk psychology about games, and you've talked numerous times in your like streams and videos about like how you got into psychology involving games. Could you ever see yourself getting involved in psychology involving anime? And do you think that would alienate your audience?
Well, first of all, brother, appreciate you. That was incredibly kind, almost too kind of an introduction for that whole thing. Yeah, I do YouTube. It's fun. It's good. I got a couple subs. But I tweeted that out, actually. I was like, how would you guys feel? Because the series I do is called Psych of Play, right? Psych of, the psychology of what it is to play games and what that means as far as like actually playing them and seeing them and experiencing them, watching them, all the whole 9 yards. But I was like, well, how would you guys feel about a Psych of anime? Would you be into that? Just kind of casually. And it was like one of the biggest tweets I've ever had. So apparently there is a market for that. Do I think I would alienate folks? Maybe. But I think I could probably get away with it if I integrated it into gaming in some way, which luckily, as you and I both know, there are quite a few anime games. And honestly, one of the reasons I asked you about that trope a minute ago is because that would be a really, really good topic for like a psych of anime if I were to do one, right? But the way I was going to connect it was going to be like psychosomatic symptoms, right? There is a very interesting phenomena in abnormal psych where people will experience symptoms that are completely psychological, right? So there's one called like phantom glove, which has apparently been seen a lot, where people will come in and they'll report their entire hand, just the hand, like where your glove would be, just being numb, just being completely numb and feeling, jittery and strange and things like that, which this is kind of a fun thing. I'm sure anyone listening to this has felt this at some point. If you lay on your arm just the right way, you'll feel like your pinky and then half of your ring finger fall asleep, or you'll feel the other side of your hand fall asleep. That's the way it usually goes. And it kind of shoots up your arm. The phantom glove thing, there's actually no, as far as unless I'm misunderstanding what I was taught, there's actually no way that just happens on its own, right? Like there's no actual medical reason that would happen. So it's a psychological thing. And usually whenever you do that and you take people in, you give them, cognitive behavioral therapy, or you take them through whatever it is whatever treatment they need to handle whatever stressor or source of anxiety they have, it goes away because it's a physical symptom, but it's being manifested from psychological reasons. And so that's sort of like the real world equivalent to the metaphysical crap that's happening in these animes and in Persona, because it's something that's being manifested from something that's, I'm pointing to my head for everybody at home, something that's being manifested in your brain and actually happening to your body, or to it's actually manifesting in the real world. So I think that'd be interesting. Obviously, it's a very, very rough idea, and there would have to be a lot of research and a lot of connections and a lot of asterisks to make sure that we were clear about, hey, so psychosomatic things are real, anime is not, but it's interesting to talk about, which is sort of the same rigmarole I go through every episode with. But yeah, I would be open to it, and I would love to do more, but I think that would be a good first one, because that feels like a good persona being like a good, transition into it.
Yeah, and I think honestly, as one of your viewers and knowing some of the other fans at this point, thanks to the streams on Twitch, by the way, Daryl Talks Games on Twitch every Wednesday.
We have fun.
I'd say that for you, you present it in such a way that most of your fans are actually interested in psychology. Like, so it doesn't matter. Like, games is definitely a huge connection, but I think that anime as well can be a solid thing as long as you're explaining the psychology really, really well. And I definitely look forward to the day when you dip into that. I'll happily help you, my friend.
Love that. Would love that.
So I kind of just wanted to give a quick idea of like what you do, and clearly you gave me a lengthy answer that establishes what you know about psychology and how you associate it with different medias, and that is just a preview of what Daryl offers on his channel on YouTube. So for those that didn't catch it, it's Daryl Talks Games on YouTube. He's also Daryl Talks Games on Twitter, and he also is Daryl Talks Games on Twitch.
Keep it uniform, baby.
Yeah. So basically, check that out if you want, guys. And last but not least, I'm going to go ahead and wrap everything up. If you want to check us out on Twitter, we are Senko Podcast on Twitter. That's SENKOU Podcast on Twitter. And we are also available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean. And I'm going to try to open us up on a couple other platforms here soon. So look forward to that. And hopefully you guys enjoyed listening to my wonderful guest star, Daryl. And Daryl, would you like to sign us off today?
First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. This is the first time I've done like a true audio podcast, so I really appreciate it, man. I've enjoyed it, and thanks for listening, guys.
Yep. Have a good one, guys. Later.